All right, gentlemen, we have ourselves a preview show, and the boys, Matt Gary, Eric Helms, and of course, here's truly Pack Lapadat, here to talk about SBD Austin. And Eric, when we're offline, you were mentioning how some have tried and failed when it comes to putting together a pro circuit in powerlifting. For a long time, this was nothing more than a dream, just for to be able to compete for money. We've seen various renditions, sometimes in the untested division, and certain circuits would pop up and go away. Certain events were on the calendar for a couple of years in a row and would go away. Seen USAPL try one on the tested side, pro cards, etc., but ultimately not what they envisioned. And a lot of the stars ended up on the Powerlifting America side and more globally, IPF. And now you were mentioning with events like SBD's been putting on, Advances just put on, Silent Worker, a real life pro circuit is starting to develop. And of course, the big one at the end of that rainbow is Sheffield, where there is serious money, girl power, etc. There's a bunch of them. There's a bunch of them all over the place popping up, and the significance of this for athletes and what that might mean. All of us on this podcast have been around when you had to pay just to enter, pay your entire way, and no one will cover costs. And now people get their way paid for world championships to get bonus money for placements. It's a whole different ballgame. What are your thoughts on that, Eric, as you see something like SBD Austin? Not only the money involved, but the production levels that SBD has put together, Sheffield rising it, but obviously SBD taking Powerlifting America Nationals, and several of these money meets in the production levels that they're bringing as well.
No, I think it's really interesting, and it's something I'm so glad to be wrong. Like in a few years ago, myself and Omar, we were really pleased about the growth, but we were like, are we about to hit the ceiling? How marketable is this? Does anybody who's not a powerlifter watch powerlifting? And now we're starting to see that with the right vision, um, having good commentators, like seriously being able to loop you in and let you know what you're seeing, creating storylines, engaging and connecting you with the athletes just like they do in the Olympics. And then, of course, companies getting behind it and us embracing the fact that, hey, powerlifting, even if you're not a competitive powerlifter, and you were talking about this with Marcellus, um, you can connect with powerlifting because you train, squat, bench, and deadlift. So there's a lot of people who maybe we didn't give enough credit for who could serve as a fan base. And with the battles that we're having, it's damn it if it isn't fun to watch people squat, bench, and deadlift, you know? Um, so I think it's really interesting, the sportification of powerlifting, even just let's say 2023, when I went to the Sheffield coach there, it looked like it was going to be reserved for like the 10 best in the world, which is kind of the way it is in like bodybuilding and other iron game sports. Like it's everybody's paying to participate, but if you are like the top dog, you can make it work. Like I'm close friends with Evie Corrigan. She won a lot of money, moved to Thailand, lower cost of living, and you can quite legitimately, someone like Agata Sitko, Austin Perkins, and Evie Corrigan, these people who are placing in the top half at the SBD, depending upon the economy they live in. I'm not talking making money off of coaching. I mean, legitimately being professional powerlifters. You get your wages paid for by a company like SBD. You win enough meets, and you get a few other clothing or supplement sponsors. You can actually leverage this into something that is paying you. And I think that's really cool. What we're seeing now is potentially that this could even extend to second tier, like top level lifters. And I say second tier with the greatest respect, because I mean, there's a very, very deep talent pool, and being second tier, quote unquote, still makes you an elite level lifter, especially if you're coming out of these countries where you have to be performing at the world class level just to get out of your country. Where, for example, you got five people in the US who could legitimately win a 93 kilo world title. So I think this is cool. And like you alluded to, this was the selling point of why you should stay with the USAPL when the split happened. you know what, IPF, sure, they're going to have you get to the world stage, but we're bigger. We don't need them. America could stand on its own. And guess what? We're going to have money meets. And unfortunately, it just didn't pan out. But I think it is now via the collaboration between some of these companies that you talked about within the IPF and the regional affiliates. We got Avancis, we got Girl Power, we got Pana was just on talking about wanting to make Silent Worker a brand that goes international. So that could be part of this circuit as well. So we're looking legitimately at having a bunch of money meets that maybe they're not paying out 10, 20,000 euros to the top level lifter, but two, three is legitimately something worth doing. And if you are also able to get a sponsorship for your entry fees and your flights and all that, you can have lifters who are making 20, 30K who aren't necessarily the best in the world. And that is like semi-pro athlete level in other sports, which is awesome. So I think this is really interesting. I think it's really cool. Then we've got folks like Matt Gary who are, being offered to coach in other countries. It is a definite different landscape, and I'm really excited about it. So I do think it's a little concerning because you also talked about, Ryan, how we're seeing some of the participation rates start to dwindle, perhaps because of, CrossFit kind of, pooping the bed and it falling apart. But I I think that's probably a local phenomenon. I'm definitely seeing powerlifting grow in Asia, Oceania, Europe. So I'm not too concerned with that. I think that could potentially hurt the US market a little bit, but it was already so big. So I'm overall very hopeful about this, and I think the SBD Austin, in addition to some pretty cool battles that we'll get into, I think it represents maybe the start of an era where it is not just the tip of the spear who have the potential to make more of a professional living off of powerlifting, but perhaps maybe, a couple of inches of metal down that spear tip.
Yeah, before I throw it to Matt, I mean, you make some great points, and there is like all these events that are available, it's a mixture here. Unlike, for instance, Sheffield, where to get the Sheffield, you either have to be a world champion or a silver medalist at the world championship, and the best of the best, closest to winning silver medalist, or except like that. It's such a high bar to get to the ultimate money meet in the entire sport, tested or untested. But these other meets are opened up where you have tip of the spear like Jesus Oliveras, the Bob Matthews, etc. But you'll also have those lifters that are coming through extremely difficult nations that wouldn't get the worlds because they got to have somebody like a Meg Scanlon in there. And I mean, Meg Scanlon is an absolute legend. You need a pathway, and those pathways, and to your point with Silent Worker, they're literally putting in a circuit where they're incorporating Ireland, Switzerland, and even talk about Quebec, Canada. And then the ultimate Grand Prix Silent Worker will be in France. You have these avenues now, and it's a mixture. It's not just those that are not making the world teams, but world class, and they need somewhere to go to display in a high level. But you'll also have your Pennas, Turbo Tiffs, etc. in those silent workers, and you'll also have in your SBDs, you'll have people like Meg Skillen, Ellie Richards, or Jesus Oliveras, or Avancis. You'll have again all these top end lifters that are for sure world champions or world class with a mixture of just those just below like a
Hmm.
Jamar, whom God bless. I hope that young man gets USA across the chest and turns that squat into a world record. But you have guys like that and ladies like that who could share the platform with world champions, and everyone's going to watch. People are paying attention to advances. People are paying attention to SBD Austin, Silent Worker, etc. So I'm glad these events exist. They're important. The production value on them is getting bigger and bigger year over year. And yeah, you're right. Maybe if the participation rates in US have dwindled as of late, as per what Marcellus is pulling up those interesting stats, it doesn't necessarily speak to globally. And the world is a big place. And we
Hmm.
see some other nations very quickly on the rise. Matt, what are your thoughts on this?
I concur with everything that you've both said, and I don't think there's ever been a more exciting time to be a part of powerlifting. To be quite honest with you, because of these opportunities, because of these pathways that are now coming to light. We look at the World Championships as being our Super Bowl of powerlifting, right? Well, there are 48 people who can make the podium or who do make the podium every year because there's 16 weight classes times three, that's 48. But then what about the other, fourth and fifth place? There's an additional 32 lifters right there that are, you know, elite level lifters who don't make the podium. And that's just from the World Championships. But then to your point, Ryan, and of course, Eric as well, we have all these other lifters in all these other weight classes who sometimes come through nations, like, and we just use the United States as an example, where in the 83 kilo weight class, we've got 7, 8, 9 lifters who can make a national team to compete at a world championships in a lot of other countries. And that's not to say that the other countries don't also express some of that same density within the weight classes. You look at Great Britain and the 57 kilo class come to mind for me. We've got 3 of the best 57 kilo females on the GB side. They've got a plethora of 120 kilo men. They've got 4 or 5 guys now that are going, mid 900 kilo range. And so creating these other opportunities and these other avenues for these elite level lifters to give the powerlifting community what they want to see. There's this voracious appetite and thirst to see high level lifting. And to your point, Ryan, this incredible production quality with just the phenomenal backdrops, the way that the athletes are treated, the social media presence, the live streams, the commentary, etc. And it makes it really an enjoyable event, not only to consume if you have the if you're blessed with the opportunity to actually attend there in person. I mean, that's incredible. But even if you can't attend in person, is to watch the live stream live or to catch one of these White Lights Media recaps after, where the production quality is just pristine and exceptional as well. So it is an excited time. I think it raises it lifts up the community for giving these other lifters these other opportunities, because again, as you said, we've all said, some of them may not get the opportunity to lift on these national teams, and they're looking for other ways to show what they can do, whether it be a regional event or whether it be some of these, events that the sponsors are throwing their hat in the ring and affording us the wonderful opportunity to just enjoy. So look, I think it's an exciting time. I think this meet is going to be no different. We're going to go through some of the matchups. But yeah, it's about aggregating eyeballs, and the more eyeballs we can get on these events, the more likelihood it is to also attract other sponsors, from perhaps outside of the powerlifting community. They could also maybe at some point in time throw more money at the sport. And I think that would be a win.
Agreed. No, well said, gentlemen. And as you talk about not only the streams map, but you made a good point about the backdrops and what they look like. Go back and take a look 2016 World Championships, and my God, is it shameful. and look at I was at that World's commentating. I mean I wasn't obviously in charge of the backdrops, but if you look at what it looks like now when we have these massive screens and you see the lifters in the background on the screens, their faces, or sometimes they're, they do a pose and flex. This is everywhere. This is from SBD to advances to like silent worker. They all have this stuff now. This is just commonplace. We've come so far with it. You can lose sight on it. You could lose sight at how far we've come if you don't stop and take a look around. It's good that these lifters, that if they're coming through a nation, you mentioned the 83s, but look at the 93s. Can you wrap your head around the fact that somebody like Russell Orhe might not make a world team, or Kaiko, or Petrie? Like, these are guys who don't make, of course they're world class. It might not make a world team. Shameful if as a sport we can't find them a place. Thank God they have avenues like North Americans to break world records like Russell Orhe did, or Avances like Jamar has an avenue to put his displays or his prowesses on display, or SBD Austin now. there's other events on the docket. Yeah, so I'm happy it's here. I'm happy SBD's got this event all together. Now, with no further ado, as I clear my throat, gentlemen, let's dive into this. Let's start with the gentlemen. We'll look at the men's side, starting with, we don't have a 59, so it looks like it's a battle of the 66s, but we got two world-class guys, Joe Jordan and Jonathan Garcia. What can you tell me about that, Mr. Gary?
Yeah, so I've been assigned those two gentlemen. Locking horns here at 66. I think this is going to be a really exciting battle. And so when, just to refresh or reboot, just to qualify everything here, so our listeners understand, this is being formatted much like Sheffield, where lifters are competing against the American record total. So the total that they put up will then be measured as a percentage of the current American record total. So that's what they're doing. The prize money is going to be weighted accordingly. I believe is it just the top three, or are we going top five? I think it's top three that receive monetary compensation.
So as well.
Yeah, I think it's just the top three. There's no additional payouts, to my understanding, for breaking records. But of course, you can leverage these chips to your advantage, and you would be wise to do so if those opportunities come to pass. So we've got, in the 66 kilo class, we've got two outstanding world-class lifters here in Jonathan Garcia, who is fresh off what could be characterized as kind of a subpar outing at World Games, but seriously looking to rebound. His training looks to be on the upswing. Taking a look at his training, he just hit a nice 270 kilo squat yesterday, and that is the deepest squat that I think I've ever seen Jonathan do. I mean, he crushed it. The depth was absolutely phenomenal. His bench seems to be on fire. He also posted a 185 kilo bench, which came through yesterday. Again, don't know if he did that in the same exact session as the squat, but the bench looked fantastic. Seems to be trending right where it's supposed to be. And as we know, Jonathan is a subtotal guy. That's where he's going to build the lion's share of his total. Hasn't really posted anything that I've been able to find in terms of the deadlift. He does have a 7.1 hit rate out of 9. And I think the story for Jonathan is potentially, if he can get his hand on a chip, right, from that squat. The American record in the squat is 278 kilos, which is his. He's obviously pound for pound one of the greatest squatters in the world. If he would be in a position to leverage that chip to his advantage, that could bode well for him, on the total there. And, Joe Jordan, let's not forget about Joe Jordan. This guy is recently your lightweight World Games champion, where he had an absolutely signature performance at World Games, going 8 for 9, missing only his last pull. Kind of a little bit YOLOing the last deadlift, making a big jump from a second to his third at World Games. Presumably there was more meat on the bone if he'd have taken a little bit lower number, but he did end up with a 720 kilo total, which matches Avery Jackson's current American record total. So both of these guys, Jonathan Garcia has totaled 718, Joe Jordan has totaled 720. So we're talking just mere, fractions of percentage points there in difference. Joe Jordan recently posting up a 262.5 kilo squat on November 8th, looking very comfortable. So not as far behind, Jonathan Garcia. Only 7.5 kilos off there in terms of training. His bench is coming along really nicely, posted 167.5 kilo bench press on November 8th. And then also his deadlift, which is, kind of the ace card up his sleeve there, because he's going to pull after Jonathan, 285 kilo deadlift on November 8th as well. So he's got a hit rate of about 7.5 out of 9. And, honestly, his training is trending even better now than it was before the trip to China. So certainly will be nice for Joe to have more of a home game, not having to travel quite as far. But this looks to be just kind of a fun battle between these two guys. Obviously, I think the edge would go to Joe simply because he's going to pull last and so forth. But of course, that remains to be seen. Both of these guys have to go out and execute, but it should be a fun battle.
Let me ask you a couple questions here. So both these gentlemen, Joe Jordan, PR total is 720.
That's right.
Jonathan Garcia, 718. But leading into China, Joe Jordan posted up an absolute monster training total. I forget what it was. It was around the 750, in the 750s, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Just huge. I can't remember what he said his body weight was when he posted up in the gym. But here's some questions for you. I'm not saying you got the answers, but we could swing this around the table. But if it's a putting situation, because he did move up to 74, briefly left the 66s and moved up to 74, came back to the 66s. Why did the total come down at World Games? Was it to do with the massive flight from here to China, multiple time zones, cutting while that massive flight, cutting while dealing with, sleep, is your circadian rhythms are off the whole nine? Did that impact it and why it brought down, or was it just like the Penna situation? His body is dying to make 66, and 720 is going to be his top end, or are you thinking we're going to see more? What's your impression, Matt?
Yeah, I think all of those things that you mentioned, Ryan, are viable reasons, not excuses, but reasons why we saw the drop off in performance from the huge training total to what we saw at World Games. And so, tremendously long flight going to China, not going to have to deal with that. Not going to have to deal. I don't know exactly where Joe lives. I don't know if he lives for the Virgin Islands, but I'm not sure that he lives there. I think he lives in the U.S. I'm sorry.
Yeah, he's in the South.
He's in the
forget.
South.
I think East
Right.
South.
Yeah, so we're talking what 1 hour time difference, because this is in Austin, Texas. So regardless of if he lives East Coast or West Coast, we're talking so virtually no time change there. And from what I understand, having talking to his coach and my good friend and colleague Jason Tremblay, he's a lot closer to body weight. So and kind of looking at his training videos, of course, Eric could comment to this with greater credibility and authority than I ever could, but he looks to be closer to the mark than he was during some of the training videos that he put forth before World Games. And so, again, I don't have any of that data specifically, but that would be my best guess.
Yeah. And on that, I know you threw it to Eric about the body weight cutting and all that. But Eric, a reminder, we're working on views. We're video for Spotify. We're obviously video on YouTube. You could lose the pump cover anytime. Got to cover yourself with that big sweater. Thank you, sir. I know you're oiled up. I could tell. Well, here we go. Here we go. All right. Thank you, sir. Listen, we all bring something to the table. I'll throw some jokes out there, but you, all right, pretty boy. Thank you. Much appreciated. So that's right. That's right. Make reasons to do a.
There he is. That's right.
There it is. There it is. If you're doing the audio only, you're missing out. You're missing out. Okay.
It's exactly.
Eric just can't get comfortable in this chair for some reason. He keeps moving.
All you need to do now.
That's right. Yawning
ask him what time it is. He'll have to check his watch.
That's right. Okay. So his jawline clearly flexed and you're just trying to hold. You're like, I'm comfortable. I'm comfortable. Quick question for both of you guys. So 720 is the American record, 718 and 720 respectively for these two gentlemen. I'm going to throw it to you, Eric. One or both of these gentlemen go over the American record?
I think one, and I think it's going to be Joe Jordan. So that both answers your question, but also to give a little more context. I think, we talk about, oh man, he's cutting down, and we've talked about a few other athletes, and we've kind of had this halo effect of the cut that wins you to Sheffield start to go away as we see some athletes who have cut and then just can't hang with it long term. And I really appreciate Shell being so open about his experiences after the initial success. We had the episode where Kedrick Kwan and I talked about it. Look, it ain't all sunshine and rainbows, and how it's really the exception that you're seeing. This kind of tip of the spear, unique opportunity performances in the unique format of attacking quote unquote vulnerable records, not par for the course. Everybody should be cutting kind of deal. The difference with Joe Jordan is that he's coming back to a weight he's been at. So he's gone up and come down. And so this is ground he's tread. He knows what this is like. And if you guys listen to the pod, if you guys listen to it, Ryan did the podcast. Dear listener, if you listen to the podcast with Joe Jordan, he talks about how he feels like that when he came up and then came back down, he's able to gain strength and then keep a lot of it. So I agree with everything Matt said, and I do think he is closer to body weight now, and he has less travel. And I think this is a sustainable level of leanness for him based on the fact that he has been here before. And he did YOLO that last deadlift at World Games. So I'm actually anticipating that he might be well above 720. I wouldn't be surprised if we see something with good attempt selection, 730 plus. That would not surprise me. And I just don't think that Jonathan Garcia is close enough to that. I think he'll struggle to stay up with that. And so my guess on this battle is that it is Joe Jordan needs to not blink, not make a mistake, cross all his T's, dot his I's, and then Jonathan Garcia is just going to have to do his best and see if it's enough. But I anticipate there might be a 10, maybe even 20 kilo spread between these two guys.
Oh, wow. What do you think, Matt? What's your impression that you're getting? Do you think one or both go over?
I think one, I agree with everything that Eric said, and I'll add one piece. I do think that Joe Jordan is a serious podium contender for the top 3 at this meet.
Okay. Well, there you have it. We're going to have to pay close attention to this one, the battle of the 66s. Let's move on to the 83s. Who has it?
That would be me
Nope.
once again. Yeah, still me. So I'll talk early and then shut up late. We've got two guys. We've got two guys going head to head here. We've got Jaden Lowe and we've got Sean Noriega, both in the 83 kilo class. I guess we'll start with Jaden Lowe, kind of the lesser known of the two competitors, coached by Joseph Franzo. Jaden's got a PB deadlift of 290, a 195 bench, and then a huge 363 kilo deadlift, really big deadlifter. Honestly, does not post a whole lot on social media. So the last thing that I saw Jaden post was just an SBD day that he did on September 7th, which ostensibly was probably the beginning of the training block because he took some very pretty easy singles, 275 kilo squat, a 185 bench, and then of course a big 350 kilo deadlift, and haven't seen anything since, neither in his posts nor his stories. So his PB total is checking in at about 845.5 kilos, which is currently about 93.5% of this monstrous, obviously, American record total that we have by Joe Bornstein of 904 kilos. So it's going to be a tall order for either of these gentlemen to probably approach anywhere close to 904. Having said that, assuming that Jaden comes in and is healthy and has been, afforded, what we would assume would be normal rates of adaptation, given, the fact that he's hopefully healthy, we can assume that perhaps he would hit a PB total, but again, probably not coming anywhere close to the 904 kilo, watermark set by, of course, Joe Bornstein. And then, of course, we've got Sean Noriega. Sean's coming in with a 307.5 kilo squat, 217 bench, and a 345 deadlift, has really seemed to turn the corner and had this revitalization, I should say, since linking up with Marcellus Williams. Sean, characteristically and statistically in years past, would be very kind of hit or miss, I think would be a nice way to describe Sean. It'd be one of those things where, it would be if Sean could put together a 9-for-9 performance, could he possibly challenge Russ and some of the other, huge 83s, and he just wasn't able to do that. But, so overall in his entire career, Sean's got a 6.4 hit rate out of 9, but in his last 4 competitions, that has jumped all the way up to 7.5. His hit rate has improved dramatically, and he's become just a much more polished version of himself. He has been dealing with a recent quad injury, but judging from his training and seeing what I've seen recently, he did hit a 287.5 kilo squat, on September 9th. He had a 215 bench, or I'm sorry, maybe these were not October, a 215 kilo bench, and of course a 320 kilo deadlift. So his training does seem to be trending in the right direction on the upswing. Again, don't think that he's gonna, be able to break the American record total, but if he shows up and that quad's feeling good and he can put together another one of these 8 for 9, 9 for 9 days that he's been, known to do in his last couple of outings, we could be looking, at a PB total from Sean. So again, don't think either of these gentlemen are going to be within striking distance of the American record, but I think that they, could put some on their total. And of course, Jaden will be pulling last. Will be pulling after Sean, presumably, because he's got that big deadlift. So if he's got his sights set on, just trying to out total Sean, as opposed to kind of looking, hey, where do I measure up in the rest of the field on percentage of total, maybe he could load something big and try to catch Sean, at the end.
Load big he can. 363 kilo deadlift. That's insane. Yeah. Having these 800-pound deadlifters now emerging, and for a little context, I mean, 845.5 is winning you worlds last year in 2024. And now we're talking so casually about 845.5. And I tell you what, so Sean Noriega for sure has reemerged. He was ever so close on his final deadlift at U.S. Nationals. He would have bumped off none other than Delaney Wallace off of the platform, two-time world champ. And he was close. That would have put him at a total of 870. So he's capable when at top end. Based off the numbers that you tracked in your scouting, bench looks good, and he needs his bench to pass. And with the new freaking bench rule, you never know which way this swings. The other lifts, like, it's hard because Sean doesn't go crazy heavy in training and prep. You can't tell from looking at his prep if he would have like 870 on the day or whatever.
Right.
He's not loading up these massive grinders, and he's not like top end in terms of what he's posting. If Sean doesn't have an amazing day, let's say bench doesn't go his way. Let's say whatever, he misses some squats, he doesn't let whatever happens. Jaden is definitely within striking distance. If Jaden ups, Sean comes down, they're close enough. But if Sean is the Sean that he was at US Nationals, you can expect a possibly 870 or plus, because I would not be shocked if he actually nails that final deadlift. He was close to US Nats, and my freaking goodness, we got another guy going 870 and up. It'll be him, Atwood, Jurens, and of course Joe B. You just throw him on the list. Like, he's lethal. If he has a bad day, and Sean, you never know with a bench press like this, and I freaking, with these rules, it could swing against him. And unlike most people who hold serve during bench, Sean is going to collect kilos onto his total. A guy like Jaden Lowe, who gets the pull last and is pulling into the 800s, and we're talking 363, 377 is the American record. In terms of kilos, I don't know where Jaden's deadlift's tracking. It's not the craziest thing to throw out there. You might grab a chip. If the chip is in play for the final deadlift, his deadlift has to improve. But if a chip is in play, that's another little caveat to throw out there. He might end with a record and have that situation where you can just throw a chip on top and boom. Obviously, we way too early to know numbers and body weights, etc. But he's got some things in his favor. I ain't mad at this 83 kilo. I'm interested regardless how Sean does, how big he could bump his total if he could go deep into it and really throw up, a warning sign. And Jaden is not somebody to overlook. He's not somebody to overlook in this field. Eric, what do you think?
Yeah, I think Sean's prior inconsistency is actually because he's a highly technical lifter. If you look at the way he squats, the way he benches, and the way he deadlifts, they are all very challenging and minute techniques to allow him to get the most total out of his body, which I've always respected. And he seems to have come into that consistency now with it. where I'm excited to see what he can do. Like you guys said, the bench rule is a potential thorn in the side that you can't even predict on a meet to meet basis. But I do think he's probably the front runner here. And I'm glad there's an 83 kilo battle because they're not really in the mix for the overall title because Joe Borenstein, who has the world record, means it's also the American record, and it's a little far down a field. So yeah, I think this is going to be a really good battle, and I'm really excited to see. I hope uh, Sean, in this late stage of his career, is able to really show everyone what he's fully capable when he gets everything to come together. And I think this is a great format for that. And I'm hopeful. I think he's for lack of a better term, he's earned it. And I really want to see that happen for him. So yeah, I'm excited, and I think he's probably going to come out on top if I had to be a betting man.
All right, gentlemen. Um, let's move this along to the 93s. And this is you, Eric?
It is me. And unfortunately, breaking news in powerlifting, both Dominique Fuqua and Gavin Aiden have pulled out. So what was going to be a really interesting three-way battle
Mm-hmm.
between, a an SBD and world champion hopeful in Gavin Aiden, who just, he's the first one to cross the 900 barrier at the NAPFs. Dominic Fuqua, who is also, totaled 900, emerging, and then Delaney Wallace, a former world champion in the 83s, moving up. Now it's a kind of a one-man race, and it's one that is really interesting though, with Delaney Wallace moving up, kind of following suit with Russell Orhey, who we just saw come out of the gates and, oh my God, set a world record, right? And everyone was talking about how they expected Taylor Atwood to be the one who was more likely to do that with more time in the weight class, coming off of a really big performance at nationals. But instead, what we saw was Russell Orhey showing, hey, when you've got someone who is essentially suppressing their natural muscle mass and weight limits, that when they do allow themselves to eat and they don't have to cut weight, and we got a hint of that when he competed in Korea a few years back. Whoa, there's a lot more meat on the bone there. And I think we're going to see something similar with Delaney Wallace. I've got a little bit of inside baseball in that Alberto Nunez was Delaney Wallace's nutrition coach for a long time. And I've spoken to Delaney about this, but Berto is like, that guy's body is just ready to gain muscle all the time. And him hanging out, in the 83s it's like if I feed him too much, he doesn't gain body fat. He just sucks it up and he looks fuller and bigger. Um, and this, I'm not saying anything that Delaney wouldn't share himself in his last appearance on King of the Lifts. He mentioned he decks at around 8%, and the technician was like, "Listen, you need to not get any leaner. You're right on the cusp of what is sustainable." And he looks at when you have an eye for this sort of thing. So I do think there is a possibility that we're going to see a similar Russell Orhey situation here. And if you go on his Instagram, you will have no idea what his totals are, but you will get the opportunity to buy an OBGYN in New York, potentially a bakery, and maybe some new property. And if you would like to book Delaney Wallace for a speaking event, he's a very motivational world champion, and he is the strongest accountant, at least in New
Dog.
York. Yeah,
What
that's all I got from
what
his
is going
Instagram.
on here? My man's social media is gone full on. Let me sell you something. And I haven't seen a squat, a deadlift. Like, I hope he's in the gym. Because if he's been in the gym grinding, I mean, he's up there with the best of them. And great comparison between look what happened to Russ and he. You're right. I mean, Delaney, you look at pictures of him from US Nats, you would know, Eric. The guy is freaking, quads are feathered and it's like it's nuts. So he's super ripped. So he definitely, what happened, he could for sure move up.
Mm,
Definitely tall for an 83. And I'm excited, but I gotta see something here. Thank God
yeah.
you're right. If only one guy's sticking, the intrigue and question marks around him are there, and it's worth the pay for admission just for that. It's true. I don't want Dom, who's in the 900s and streaking, and I was really impressed with him, and I want to see where he's going to be at. Disappointed. Gavin, I would love to see Gavin again, but we've seen them. I want to see them again, but the question marks, there's no question marks around any of them like there is around Delaney due to the fact that he's moving up. And with all due respect to Gavin and Dom, Delaney's a two-time world champion, a world record breaker, and two-time Sheffield appearance as well as Sheffield podiumer. The guy's resume is fantastic. So we still got him in there, and he's moving up. We know how dangerous a guy like him moving up might be. And we are completely flying blind. If you want to see it, you got no indication. It's just how you like me now moment, I guess, huh?
Yeah, I agree. And you know what I will say though is when he has not been posting his biggest numbers previously, it's preceded a big performance. So I'm hopeful. I know that Delaney is a power lifter, but he is not a huge. I don't want to say this disrespectfully. The man doesn't really follow powerlifting. This is a known fact. He's focused on his business right now, but I know when he's in the gym, he's focused. And I have no doubt that he's taking his craft very seriously while maybe not necessarily gearing his Instagram towards it. So I am anticipating some big things coming from Delaney, in addition to some great opportunities for new business owners in the New York area.
What do you think?
I just want to add one piece to this conversation to piggyback or to kind of go off in a slightly different direction. There is a part of this with these two guys not being present, right? Gavin and Dominique, which actually adds a bit of intrigue and excitement. And again, this is not going to turn into a preview show for the Powerlifting American Nationals next year, but it leaves us wondering where these guys could be by that time. Because presumably, neither Dominique nor Gavin, presumably, between now and the time of next nationals, are likely to compete, right? They're probably, neither one of them is not going to compete. So they're in the lab continuing to train. And just inside scoop from Steve DeNovi, Dominique's coach, Dominique was on pace, according to Steve, to potentially break this 93 kilo total. So, I mean, the fact, and Dominique has a high hit rate. He's one of these very clean lifters that makes a lot of lifts, and he's easy to judge. He's a very, high bar squatter and so forth, and conventional deadlifter. And so not erratic and doesn't tend toward a lot of misses. And, and then of course with Gavin as well, just having the propensity to lay it all on the line and hit big lifts. It just, I think it makes the 93s, all the more exciting. Come next year at Nationals. So sorry that we're not going to get to see them, but to your point, Ryan, and of course, Eric as well, this is really going to be awesome to see what kind of package Delaney can bring, because, if he uses the new found muscle, on his chassis, this could be extremely exciting.
Easy there on his chassis. You slide dog, you. Let me ask you guys this question. I don't know. I apologize. Fucking Eric took his shirt off and got me all wound up. Let me expose his chassis. Fucking Eric Helms exposed his chassis, and here we go. Quick question here. Delaney Wallace, does he hit 900 kilos as a 93? I'll throw it to you first, Eric.
I'm 50-50 on that, I think it's going to be a big advancement on his total. I don't know if he's going to get all the way to 900.
We're totally flying blind. So I mean, it's
yeah, it's tough. At least with I predicted Russell Orhe wouldn't break the world record, and I was wrong. No, that's not right. I predicted they both would, and I was wrong on Taylor. You know what? I'm hopeful. I think we're going to see a 900 total come out of the lane.
We just watched you talk yourself into it.
You did.
Okay. Matt, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm the same way. I'm 50-50 and could be convinced in either direction. And I'll just be the contrarian only because Eric said yes. I'll go ahead and say no. I think what is exciting is to be seen will be the huge jump, presumably on his subtotal, right? Because he's going to be more leveraged for squatting and benching big. It remains to be seen. I mean, look, it remains to be seen for all three of these lifts because we haven't seen any training footage. But oftentimes, the gain in weight does not occur in the same, or I should say, the rate of progress with the deadlift does not always occur with the same way that it does with the subtotal lifts because of the changes in leverages and start position and so forth. So that we'll see. But just because Eric said yes, I'll go ahead and say no.
Perfect. All right, let's move on. 105s.
Yeah. So the 105s are interesting. We have two big name lifters of different eras who had been on the world class level and have been at Sheffield. So we have Ashton and Mikey Davis. So we've got team craftsmanship versus Joey Flex. There's been drama there before, but yeah, this is an interesting situation because both of these gentlemen can have gone through like rough patches of their body not holding up and they're on the upswing, but I think they're at different points on the upswing. I don't think Ashton Rauschka is quite at 100% Ashton, and I think Mikey is actually at 105%. If I'm kind of gauging his numbers right, which is kind of cool because on paper, if you take a fully peaked version of these two gentlemen, it's Ashton's battle to win, and just that's kind of the reality. We've all talked about how Ashton in most of the battles is the strongest guy in the room, and that's been the case. And when he loses, it's because he's either hurt or he doesn't make attempts or something else gets in the way, right? But he is just an absolute monster. The kind of numbers he can put up on both the squat and the deadlift makes his very respectable, but maybe not necessarily world class on the same degree as the squat and deadlift bench press. Not a problem, even though he's looking at a 190-ish kind of bench press when you're putting up 370, 380 on squat and deadlift, it doesn't really matter, right? So incredibly strong, but if you were to look at his performances as of late, looking at Ashton, what we saw in late October, 365 squat. He put up a pretty easy 186 bench back at the end of August, and 355 deadlift that had probably a little more meat on the bone at the end of October as well. So, where that's going to land him, I'm kind of thinking that, we're probably looking at a 930 low end total. Perhaps if he had a great to like 960, like really, really like if he is up there. But I just doesn't look like he's on pace to have an excellent day for him. But I think Mikey, if he has a good day, he's looking at something like 930. And if we look at some of his training totals, he put up a 370 deadlift in October, a 217.5 bench press also later in October, and a 312 squat. And each one of those, again, that is a month ago or almost a month ago, and a little bit of meat on the bone there. So while his personal best total is 915, I think we're going to see him, in competition. I think we're going to potentially see him surpass that, which would be pretty cool. And I don't think either one of these gentlemen are going to be real threats in the overall lineup because they're looking at a 979 total in the 105s. There's a pretty big American record there from nationals that just happened, but and worlds. But the battle between them is going to be interesting because of kind of where they're both pacing. So I think we're probably going to see somewhere in the 920 to 930 range for Mikey, which is awesome. That's a PB total for him from his 915 previous in comp. And then the question mark is where is Ashton at? I don't have any inside information on either one of them. They're posting what they're posting, but I am interested to see where this lands.
Yeah. So, quick note off the hop. Yes, Michael Davis is actually part of Flex Training Systems. He's a coaches some top end athletes himself, but he's actually coached by John Song right now, and he is looking good. And I mean, John Song knows a thing or two about 105s, huh? That's who's got Anthony McNaughton. Yeah, so he is looking good. Now the thing on Ashton's it was a pec injury that previously had plagued him severely and like at Sheffield and uh, has hampered him for most of 2025. And to your point about not seeing much of deadlift, we're not entirely sure where he's at. Marcellus was on the podcast, and we were more targeting, like, obviously, can he win the battle, or how close of an intrigue can it be by the time U.S. Nationals rolls around, and what might he bring to the table for SBD Austin? Marcellus wasn't entirely clear. I think he's still the favorite over Michael Davis because his squat looks big, his deadlift looks big, but I haven't seen any indication of that bench press. And his bench, 186 and 215 was his previous. And to your point, in August, 186. And if he's not posted, I don't have a lot of hope that it's gone up a lot since then. That's a decent drop. Matt, is it enough of a drop off the bench press? And is Mikey Davis gone up enough that Ashton might get upset here?
The short answer is no. I don't think so. I think Ashton still, I believe, has too much horsepower in the bookended lifts of the squat and the deadlift to be able to surpass Mikey. That would be my best estimation. And I do think that Ashton could potentially take a shot at the American record in the squat and certainly in the deadlift. I see no reason why he can't pull over a 369 kilo deadlift. Ashton's a big deadlifter. He's been known to take big jumps. We talk about his PB total. Ryan, you had alluded to that his PB total is 968. If you recall, he did that in Memphis at the USAPL Nationals. And that was on a 7 for 9 day, I remind you. So again, It's all about him getting his pec back healthy. I don't think that it's 100%. I don't think that sometimes you can be physically ready to press close to what you've pressed before. And I'm not saying he's back up to 215 kilos. That's his PB. I don't think we're yet going to see a 200 kilo bench out of Ashton. I would say he's probably going to be, to what Eric alluded to, maybe a 190-ish would be cool. If he hit 186 in training, 190 to 195, I think would be an outstanding day for him in the bench press. But you can be physically ready to handle some of those weights, but not altogether there mentally. Having the trauma and kind of this PTSD, having suffered some similar injuries like that myself, I know that sometimes it's hard to get back on the horse and take a big swing at some of these bigger weights, even though, as an organism, your body is physically ready to do the work. But anyway, so I think it would be more of an issue of him using this as a springboard meet to see, hey, where am I at now? And then let me build something big into nationals so that I can lock horns with the likes of Anthony McNaughton. But I do think that Ashton will have enough to overtake Mikey Davis, even with a diminished bench press.
Fair enough. Now let's move into the 120s. And fellas, some more sad news. Rondel Hunt, who was injured and had to pull out of Advances. We were all hoping. So we missed the battle with Nonzo. And just having a performance period. And then we're hoping, okay, well, 6 more weeks, maybe. And I think he was also hoping as well, but announced that, alas, he's not going to make it to SBD Austin after all and has to pull out. So we're missing Rondel Hunt. We still got Bob Matthews. What does that mean for the bigger picture? Well, there is some talking points to be had here. So we don't have yet the heavily hyped showdown of Rondel Hunt and Bob Matthews. And my goodness, we've been talking about this for a hot minute. It almost happened at American Nationals. Now it almost happened at SBD Austin. And now what the heck? It's not going to happen at all 2026. I got to say off the hop that I can't help but feel that favors Bob Matthews, who's trying to bulk up into the 120s. The longer Bob Matthews bulks into the 120s, the better. Everybody has said this, including Bob himself from the get-go. So it's only helped him when the showdown finally happens. I'll throw that out there. Now let's talk about what's going to happen at SBD Austin, November 22nd. Bob Matthews on October 26th posted up a training total of 1,000 kilos. We got a 360 kilo squat, a 250 kilo bench press, and a 390 kilo deadlift. Now, what does that look like in terms of a comparison to these American records? In terms of the single lifts, only the deadlift is really looking like it's going to be in contention to grab a total or an American record, sorry. But the total American record is 978.5. And Bobb posting up 1,000 kilos in the gym with no weight cut in sight. And this is all in America. I think that American record is going to get broken and taken for a ride. Bobb is back. He's had a long hiatus. I'm interested in seeing where he weighs in. He looks healthy. He looks primed and ready. In the gym previously, not this particular prep block, but previously we'd seen 1020. Now here's where some interesting dialogue is going to happen, and I have some questions for you men of a gentle nature. Eric, 1010 is the biggest total in the 120s for 2025. That was posted by the uncrowned king, Rondel Hunt. However, by the closing of 2025, will Bobb Matthews have surpassed him with the biggest total in the 120s?
I think Bobb's going to total over 1,000, but I don't think he's going to total over 1010. I think he's going to maybe shoot for that. That might be kind of like a mark. I think we're going to see a 4-digit number out of Bobb. And I think he is going to win this meet because just looking at the numbers, he's looking to be 3 or 4% over, something like that. And yeah, I think it's his to win. I'm excited to see it. I'm curious about Bobb. Like, he is obviously a phenom, but I do quite like, there is a limit to how much you can go up weight classes and improve in the drug-free powerlifting ranks, because we've talked about chassis and we were joking about it. That is a thing. Like, there are some skeletal frames that are built better for a given weight class than another. You can go up 1 weight class, but when you're trying to go up like 2 from kind of where your body wants to be, I mean, he's a phenomenal lifter. It's a genetic anomaly. He's a generational talent. Don't get me wrong, but I don't know that he's built to be a 120. I think if we were to go, where do we think his best like coefficient would be? Where would he be most competitive in the history books? It's probably 105 was my guess, just looking at him. But if you take one of the best 105s in the era that in any and all eras that we've seen up to this point, yeah, they're going to be good in the 120s, damn it. So I am curious to see if I'm wrong there. If he's totaling 1010, I think I'm wrong. I think he'll do well. If he's totaling closer to 1,000, I think we're going to possibly see that he's probably going to start to see slower progress as he moves up into and fills out the 120s, and it's primarily going to be like on his bench, which goes up with body weight almost in kind of like a 1 kilo to 1 kilo conversion for a lot of people, just because your butt's bigger and your chest is bigger and your decline is more and your range of motion decreases, and it's not necessarily, you just get a little chunky and you can bench more, is what I'm saying. But no, I'm really curious. I think, so to answer your question, 1,000, yes. 1010, maybe asking a bit too much.
Matt, 1010 is the biggest total in the 120s. If Bobb can best 1010, what a talking point going into 2026.
Yeah, Eric Helms needs to get out of my head, because he and I are thinking pretty much the exact same things. I think his total starts with a 1 and it's a 4-digit number. Agreed there. I think, look, if you just pull out your calculator and you start playing, best case scenario, 9 for 9, knocking it completely out of the park. I mean, he might have 1020 would be like this otherworldly performance, right? That'd be a 400 kilo deadlift, a 370 squat, and a 250 bench. I just don't think he's quite there yet, right? So I do think he's going to wind up landing somewhere between 1,000 and 1010. I think 1010 would be just a flawless day for him. I think that would be incredible. It's one thing to do these things on an SBD day in a gym. It's another thing to do them under rigorous judging, I mean, the weigh-in's not an issue, but it's just a rigorous drudging, all the lifts in the same day to standard, the competitive atmosphere, et cetera. But yeah, and I agree with Eric. I think he's going to win this meet because 978.5 is low with respect to his current strength level.
The hopeless romantic in me just got my heart broken by both of you. But
there's two negative Nancy's.
I just rewatched his 1,000 kilos in the gym. Ain't gonna lie, that squat's a grinder, and so is that deadlift, and the bench press was top end. I ain't gonna lie. So on that day, 1,000 kilos was the max. Now that day was October 26th that he posted. Right. So it was later than that, and he would have probably about a month, another 4-week block. So now I have to ask myself, that was top end 4 weeks out. In 4 weeks, can old Bobby Knuckles scrap together 12.5 kilos? Excuse me. Can he do 10 kilos in a cookie? Because is he not have a deadlift record in his sights? Am I crazy? What's the American deadlift record?
The American deadlift record is 380 kilos, and his PB is 385.
Okay. Yeah. So not 10-12.5. He needs 10-10.5. Hang on a second. I need you guys to hang on a second. I need Eric to put his sweater back on. He's distracting me. Thank you, Eric. Jesus, we're gentlemen. Okay. And you're acting a bit of a whore right now. You hurt my feelings earlier with 1,000 kilo total. Okay. All right. So now the conversation is, can Bobb in his last 4 weeks, I'm going to ask you to take it off at some point later on in this podcast. That's fine. Can Bobb in the last 4 weeks put 10.5 kilos? We're talking 1,000 kilos. 1,000 kilos. 10 kilos is literally nothing. Right over 3 lifts. 3 lifts. I can't find 10 kilos. 0.5. You guys are crazy. Is what it is. The world's beating you down and put a callus over your heart. Okay? So I say 10-10.5 for old Bobby Knuckles. And then leading into 2026, everyone's talking Rondel, and they should. I love Rondel. He's the uncrowned king. But Bobb can say, I took 2025, and we gotta settle this dispute, and I'll be even bigger when you see me. And that is only better for powerlifting. And that's why, even if Rondel's not here, his total will be 10-10. All right. SBD, cut it. I gave you the soundbite. Okay. Q Marshall. Here we go. Let's talk about 120 plus Jesus Oliveras. And gentlemen, this one is also me. Jesus, forever coming into this. And this is really, I know you guys probably seen this video, but the talking point for Jesus in the last couple of years was the deadlift. He is the strongest powerlifter that ever lived, tested or untested. And his performance at Sheffield, in my opinion, ranks as the #1 performance in powerlifting history. And you could tell me 5 other ones and we could debate about it. And we had a podcast where we did, and that's fine. But at the very least, if you're talking about your top 5, I want to hear Jesus Oliveira, Sheffield 2023 in there. Jesus at Sheffield 2023, to cap that off, hit a 410 deadlift. We watched him in the gym and forever struggling on lockout on deadlift. Forever struggling with that. Attempted 410, and it looked exactly like all the other deadlifts that are getting red lit on the platform. And it would not have gave you any kind of confidence going into SBD Austin. Can he replicate what he did in Sheffield on that magical night of 2023 when he became the strongest man that ever lived. And Jesus himself said, on audio mic'd up, it's not good enough. I won't pass. It's not good enough. Paced around a little bit, chalked up his hands, threw on his belt, and went back in. 410. Clean. Clean, clean, clean 410. If you guys haven't seen it, have you seen it? If you haven't, we're going to watch it all together. We're going to have a little watch along party. Have you seen it, Matt?
I have, but I'd like to see. I'd like to see it again.
Yeah, that's Matt Gary. Yeah, Matt, show it to me one more time. Yeah, I think Brittany said it best. Hit me, baby, one more time. Let me pull this up for you, Matt. Let me pull this up for you, buddy. And can I say something? I could watch powerlifting with you all night, buddy. All right. Let's take a look at this. I'm going to do a screen share. You guys see that?
I see that you've started screen. There it is. Yep.
Now we see it. Now we see it.
Let me find. I believe here it is. Now, somebody had told me previously for some freaking reason, I didn't have noise. I think I got the noise on when I shared this. So anyways, here we go. This is it.
We're not getting sound, buddy.
I'm wondering if that's not it. Hang on a second. I think it's actually.
I don't think we got sound.
Right. Yeah, no sound yet.
Make sure you're clicking the bottom right on turn on the sound on the actual Instagram if you don't have it already done.
His knees are soft. My man's going back in. There it is. All right. So Matt, I'm hearing you guys sorry. You guys couldn't hear that?
Nope.
Correct. No volume.
No volume. Perfect. Excellent. That's what I wanted. That's going to go really well on the podcast too. Fuck. Anyways, sorry. But all right.
You might have to edit that in.
Yeah.
I know you're looking to do so, but it might be worth it.
That's right.
But yeah, he was. He missed. He missed the one. It was soft knees, and he absolutely hit it. You've seen the captions on it, gentlemen, even if you didn't. And he said, I got a dilemma. I don't think it would have passed. And he had a real life. People were saying, and this is how you get better. 2 years. If he wasn't this guy, you're not getting better. He said, no, that's not going to pass. It's not going to hit. And he hit it. And in my estimation, his second one was clean and it hit. If I look at his other lifts, you gentlemen are shaking their head for those that aren't on the video. In this other lifts, he hit 455 kilos September 30th. Easy. He took 435. That's 959 pounds for a PR triple October 6th. He also hit a PR for 4 also in October. My man is hitting squat PRs. His deadlift looks on point. And in terms of his bench press, yoink, I seen him do 325 for 3 in August. It's been a hot minute since I seen bench press from our boy. However, squat is there, hitting PRs, deadlift is back. I don't know where his bench is at. So we're riding on faith. If the bench press is there, he might break the American record, which he set at Sheffield. The American record being the biggest total all time, 1152.5. I need to ask you guys something. Do you have faith? Matt? Because it's going to take, you don't see his bench. Squat PRs. Deadlift looks clean. No bench.
So I'll give you the short answer first, and we can swing it around to Eric, and then I can come back and provide some context. Do I think he's going to break the American record total and his high water mark of 11:52.5? No, I do not.
Eric, are you doing cardio right now?
I am actually literally on a bike while we're doing
Such
this.
a fitness. I mean, listen, he's prepping for the world championships. God bless. I love that. He's literally, I've never in my life had an athlete on the podcast while prepping for a world championships. And Eric Helms is doing it right now for the first time in King of Lifts history. I bless you for doing this podcast when you're literally November 23rd, Matt, is his worlds. Do you realize that? That's the day after the event we're previewing. I can't believe, and this is the second podcast he's done with me this week. Bless your heart, Eric. I freaking owe you. Love you like a brother. Sorry, go ahead.
It's my pleasure. And so long as you guys don't mind me bobbing back and forth because I'm doing some cardio. Listen, hey, I was told that I had a calloused heart by someone a few minutes ago for simply saying that I didn't think Bob Matthews would total over 10:10. So to avoid being scolded again, I'm going to say yes. I do think Jesus is going to break the American record. No, but in all seriousness, I think it's possible. If his body weight is where it needs to be, he may just not be posting his bench because he's just not excited about it. It might be kind of sitting around where it has been, which is my hope. And if he's even close to his prior bench, within 5 kilos of it, and he has a great day on squat and deadlift, then it's certainly possible. And I think it'd be great to see, So out of a sense of hope and desire, I think there's a possibility there, and I'd love to see it. And that'd be really cool. And I want him to break it. So yeah, it's difficult to know without seeing a bench press, but I agree that I love his attitude and his honesty with his deadlift. And I also agree with, I think you mentioned this on one of the King of the Lifts, that it is the fact that he locks and unlocks slightly, but is still in a relatively locked out position on the deadlift that is a bit of his bane. But he's looking good. And I think if he can continue to correct that, I think he's probably less at risk of losing his biggest pull. So I'm excited. I'm hopeful. I'm cheering for him, and I'd love to see him break that record. And I think it's definitely possible.
I'll say one thing before I throw it back to Matt. In terms of the bench, you're right. Some people, unless they're hitting PRs, because benches, Russell says, like, yeah, nobody cares. I post my bench and everyone goes to sleep. Like, I get no traction on my bench. A lot of times people aren't excited about bench unless it's a PR. And to your point as well, he doesn't really need a PR if he's PRing in squat, which is going to add more kilos. As long as within 5, maybe he's just not super excited about the bench. But if bench is very much off, it's a different story. Hard to tell. Matt, what were your thoughts on thinking he wouldn't hit that?
So I think there's a lot of layers to peel back with this onion, and I'll be as succinct and as precise as I can possibly be. The reason that I said no is because he's going to have a perfect 9-for-9 day to break the 11:52.5 mark. And that's what he did at Sheffield in 2023. And so if we just start with the squat, his squat, look, I trained one of these guys, and he's one of 2 right now in the world, or maybe one of 3 that handle these kinds of weights. And the bar reacts differently once you get above, certain thresholds. And when he squatted the 478 for the world record at Sheffield, he weighed 186.7 kilos. He's been hovering about 179 at his last few competitions. So that's about a 7 kilo difference. That's not insignificant in terms of the leverages, the way that his belt fits, et cetera. Now, he did hit a PR triple, to your point, Ryan, in the squat, and the 1,003 looked very comfortable. But there's a big difference between a 455 squat, which is, kind of what he's been squatting lately at the last few competitions, versus a 478. And so I do think he's closer to 478 than he is 455. Maybe he's at a 465, 470. But again, I don't know if they're going to have the gumption, if you will, to put an American record squat on the bar. So, even if he ends at a 470, he would then need about a 275 bench. That would be a 2.5 kilo bump on his bench press. And presumably, he hasn't been posting much bench, but his bench has been, Jesus is a good bencher and he makes a lot of benches. I mean, he's gone 3 for 3 in his last 3 meets. So it is like Jesus to execute well when it comes to the bench press. I'm not, denying that fact. But so if we say he's got a 275 kilo bench, then he's then going to need, right around that 410 mark in the deadlift to get anywhere near breaking that 1152.5 kilo total. And I will say this, kudos to him for retaking that deadlift and making sure that the knees were locked, the hips were back, the grip was solid to competition standard. I just know this to be pretty much a fact. He does not deadlift on the same day that he squats in training. And I've been saying that on many podcasts before, and that is not a knock against him. It is just the way that his training is set up. He does not squat in the same day that he deadlifts. And so the deadlift is presumably his standalone cornerstone exercise of the day where he comes in, and I don't know what he does to warm up for the deadlifts. Maybe he just jumps in and deadlifts first, but the hands react differently. The body reacts differently when you are forced to deadlift after having taken 6 attempts, 3 in the squat and 3 in the bench. Your hands start to swell and do things that they don't normally do on a training day where you just come into the gym and your cornerstone movement or your, of the day is that deadlift. And so I've said it many times before, I think he's got the hip and back strength to pull 425, 430. I mean, if you put some straps on this guy, he could probably pull 435 kilos. The question is, how are his hands going to react? And what we've seen more recently since Sheffield is he's only made 1 of his 3rd deadlifts at the last 5 competitions. So since Sheffield, he's only made 1, and that's a low hit rate. And so again, after squatting big and benching big, I just don't know that he's going to have the hands and to hang on to it. Is the strength there? Yes, absolutely, 100%. And it's been there in previous preps, but it's just a function of putting it all together on the day. And so, look, I think we talk about capability and then probability. Capability, I think he's 1160 capable based on what I've seen. That would be a 470, a 275, and a 415 deadlift. I think he's capable of that. Do I think it's probable? No, I don't.
I mean, you're well spoken. There's no question. Anybody who tries to go against you, your numbers, dead to rights. You've trained athletes that large, and know what happens in the gym. It comes onto the platform. Love that you guys have went the other way on a couple of these, so we get some context. It honestly is best. And when one person goes one way and the other guy steelman cases the other, even if he doesn't necessarily believe it, sometimes be like, all right, let me do a devil advocate. All right, gentlemen, let's move into the women's side. And this will start with the 52s.
Can I say one thing, Ryan?
Are
we picking a podium for the men?
Oh, go ahead, sir.
Did you Eric, did you want to pick a podium for the guys?
You're muted, love.
You're muted, my friend.
Yes, I do want to pick a podium. And my thoughts, like we've already talked about, I think we both agree that we're looking at a pretty clear win from Bobb Matthews. And then from there, I'm thinking we're going to see Joe Jordan come in the 2nd spot. And then I think it's probably, I mean, it's tough because I said that Jesus was going to break the record. So now I've come kind of locked into my devil's advocate position of okay. If I'm right and my journey to not stopping believing, shout out to the iconic 80s band, is right, then I have Jesus Olivares running out the podium. If I am right, if I'm incorrect, and that my hope is misplaced and my faith is misplaced, and that while my heart is not calloused, my brain might be because I listened to you, Ryan, then an analytical person might perhaps say that Jonathan Garcia might be in that 3rd spot. So that there's a toss up between 3rd and 4th between Eric's brain and Eric. How about that?
Matt, how about yourself, sir?
I concur. Same podium, nothing to add.
I love how My boy listened to Matt break down the numbers and he decided to hedge his bets when the podium fix came around. God bless. All right. I would have done the same. All right, gentlemen, let's move on to the women's in the 52s.
Yeah, I think that's me. And this is pretty cool. So what we have here are two previous national champions in the 52 kilo class in PA, and then one person who has been, I think, twice a silver medalist. So we've got a really good battle of American 52s here, split between Jamie Fisher. I want to make sure I pronounce her name right. Is that Ariel Patra?
I
Help me
believe
out.
so, yes.
Cool. And then Vanessa Pineda. So these women are all very close to each other within kilos. So if we start with Jamie, she has been mentioning in some of her posts that she's coming back from injury. But her numbers are looking pretty good. She did a deadlift just a week ago, about 155 with a little bit left, a challenging 125 squat, and then a 110 bench that looked pretty solid as well. And these are all just about a week ago. Now, the one thing I will say is I was looking at her squat, and if I was a ref, and I'm not, by the way, so yeah, questionable qualifications to even make this statement. I don't think she looks like she's standing erect enough to get the squat command. I'm a little concerned. And it is a side angle, which kind of exaggerates that. But I've watched her squat several times, and she's almost in that kind of that Pana-esque position where he had that unfortunate bomb out. And then the depth, in that position, when you're that low bar, it's also always going to be borderline, but it's a good squat potentially. We will see. Hopefully she corrects that, or at least is a little more, I'm going to say, conservative in the way she sets up on that in competition. But I'm a little concerned that where she thinks she at on her squat so close to competition may not be the standard. I don't know. It's hard to tell from the training angle. But she looks like she's maybe not in her tip-top shape. Her best is 415. And these three ladies are all in the low 400s, which is an incredible total for 52, don't get me wrong. But the American record total is a lot higher than that. So this really is a battle that is kind of contained to the 52s. So when we look at Ariel, she has not been showing a whole lot of deadlifts, but she did do a paused 162.5 back in September. So I don't know. We haven't seen a deadlift in a long time. She might just be hiding her weapon because she does have a big deadlift. And perhaps that's all that's going on. Maybe she's a little hurt. I hope not. And the bench press, relatively easy 90 at the end of October. And then just 2 weeks ago, 147.5. Now, like I said, the records are quite high, but in terms of where these ladies have been in their own numbers, 147 is only 2.5 under her best squat. 90 is equal to her best bench. So there's probably a bench PR in the works that we're probably going to see that. So she's definitely on pace to hit a bench PR. Squat's looking strong. And, if that pause deadlift is any indication, potentially even a deadlift PR. So the 2024 national champ, she might be my front runner here. And then if we look at, apologies, the phone is ringing. If we look at, I'm just going to mute myself real quick. If that's okay. And if we look at the last lifter,
Multitasker. Go
I
ahead.
am. If we look at Vanessa, apologies for that, guys. Her numbers are very, very similar to Ariel in terms of kind of where her strengths and weaknesses are. They both got a big deadlift, a decent bench, and a pretty good squat. She has a best total of 415, and she is looking pretty good. 3 weeks ago, we were looking at an easy 82.5 bench, and then a 147.5 and a 178, relatively top end squat and deadlift. And she's definitely showing her numbers. So, she's on pace to be doing something close to her best. So we have a very tight battle, and I don't know which way it's going to go. I think this is going to be exciting to see. The 52 is probably going to come down to the last deadlift, if I had to guess. So yeah, I don't know how it's going to go, but I am actually excited to see the 52s and see how they pan out.
Thank you, sir. And Matt, your take on the 52s? Anything you want to add? Should we move along or?
Yeah, let's move along. I pretty much have the same info and the same input as Eric there.
Gotcha. 57, sir.
Yeah. So obviously Matt's going to have some inside baseball here, so it's probably good that I am taking the 57s. And by the 57s, I mean the 57, Natalie Richards. So I'm really excited because we know she's been coming back from injury. She's on the upswing, and I think we're now looking at her potentially going to actually be pretty much fully back. In some of her posts, she was talking about that it's finally good. We talked about a little bit of how after a significant injury, there can be a bit of PTSD and fear. She hit a 210 deadlift, and that seemed to be a big confidence builder for her. It was a challenge, and being able to grind through a deadlift after a back injury is a really, really important mental obstacle to clear for an athlete. So I expect her to feel like she can let the rope out and really go for something. She's running a one-woman race in terms of her weight class. Of course, this isn't a weight class based battle, but it's not like athletes aren't thinking about that. So Natalie Richards, I'm really excited to see. I think we're going to see a big total come out of her. And I think she's in a spot where she's back on form. I think we have a potential to see a 500 to 520 total come out of her, which is awesome. And there's a really good shot that she could be right around or slightly above that 516 and a half American record total. So she's probably going to be one of the few athletes in the women's lineup who has the opportunity to get a 100% plus score, potentially breaking that world record. And if you look at her Instagram, just 2 days ago, she squatted 185. About 3 weeks ago, she put up a 112 and a half bench press and a 210 deadlift. So that's pretty damn close. And it's equal to her bench PR in competition. And I think her PB deadlift in comp is 225. So she's not far off her best numbers by any means. And that squat is very close to her best and might be a little bit left on there. So I'm excited. I'm really excited to see where she's going to go. And I'm rooting for her. I hope she's able to break that record and put up something that shows that the champ is back.
Denovi disciple, Natalie Richards, 516.5. And at one point, not only the 57 kilo world champion, but the best lifter at 2023 Worlds. And here we are in 2025, and the world record has only moved to 520. Still within reach. To reclaim her dominance by all means if she's 100%, but that's the big question. I got two of them for you, gentlemen. Back to back, real quick. I don't want any big explanations. We could talk about it afterwards, but I need my back-to-back answers real quick. Matt, does she beat the American record? And then Matt, does she best the world record? Let me know.
So just to be clear, the American record is slightly less than the world record. So if I say no, then the
That's
answer
right.
is no to both. And I'm going to say no. I'm going to say she's going to be just a stitch under.
Both. Okay. Well, the American record, let alone the world. Gotcha.
Right.
Eric?
I think she's gonna get over the American record, but I don't know that she'll. I think she's gonna be gunning for the American record because that's the comp she's in, and this is a money meet, and confidence builder, swing for the fences, maybe not. And at this kind of level of competition, I know it's only 3.5 kilos, and you berated us for not being able to find 10.5 for your boy.
1,000 kilo total. He has twice as big a total though, so that's.
Yes. So, but again, 5 kilos on a 500 total versus 10 kilos on
You're
a 1,000.
right. God damn it, mathing me. You're right.
You're,
damn it.
I am at risk here for having a calloused heart once again, but I'm going to say no. I think she's got a good shot at the American record, but I think the world one will be just a touch too far, and she may not even be going for it based upon, she's going to be earlier in this flight, right? So she's not going to get to make a decision based upon, where's everyone else? She's going to put the thing down there as far as she can and hope it shakes out in her favor, being one of the lighter weight classes. So I would be doing something like, let me try to chip that world record and American record. I wouldn't be going for the world record. Not trying to make a statement here, trying to win the meet. That's personally what I would do.
Interesting. Matt, do you have any inside baseball on this? How's she feeling?
Yeah, she's feeling great. Look, this is the closest that we've seen, to 100% back of Natalie Richards since her injuries, and that's exciting because she's the premier 57 kilo American lifter. I mean, those are just the facts. So she's going to be knocking on the door of that American record total, and in a really good spot going into nationals, and then assuming she makes the national team, to hit something bigger at Worlds. But I think she's going to be literally right there. She might even be in a position, I mean, depending upon the chip and the squat and so forth, she could wind up, maybe being 0.5 over, best case scenario. But I'm just predicting that she might come in a couple kilos under, but she's as close as we've seen her in recent times, which is fantastic.
And with intent for Nat, she's got time. She wants to reassert herself at US Nats, get to the World Championships, hopefully win Worlds, get to Sheffield, yada, yada, and take it from there. And certainly she's got more time. If she's even within striking distance, because again, the world record at the world stage, still 520. We're talking real close. All right, let's move to the 57s.
She was the 57.
Oh, sorry, 63 is what I meant to say. Thank you, Matt. And as we move to the 63s, and Christy Hazard is our lone 63. Christy has not been posting much, not on Instagram, not on TikTok, but I could talk a little bit about Christy here. Last time we seen her under the IPF umbrella, you got to go way back to 2019 at the University Cup. A young 19-year-old Christy Hazard won the University Cup with a 420 kilo total. Now, 6 years later, Christy threw 105 kilos on her total, campaigning as a 63, crossing over from the USAPL, did the circuit over there, an American national champion in the USAPL, won some money meets like Arnold, 525 as a 63. It's serviceable. She's on the uprise. She's only 25 years old as of her last meet, and has some potential here. We got some veterans. It's an uber stacked division in the 63s. But if she can add to that total, and I'm interested in seeing how much she can add to it. She's young. The rate of progress is there. So Christy has an opportunity while everybody's tuning in on a very big platform, SBD Austin, to send a message. Look out for me in 2026. Do not look past me at US Nationals. You miss lifts and I hit. I am a threat. If not for the overall title, for sure for a podium finish. And getting a podium finish at US Nationals is nothing to scoff at. She's a talent and one worth tuning into. So I'm excited to see where Christy ends up. But unfortunately, the lone 63 in the mix. And so no head-to-head competition. And, of course, the American record by the legendary Megan Scanlon at 566 is definitely going to be out of reach in terms of that. Nevertheless, you're going to want to watch Christy Hazard when she hits the platform. Now let's move it along to the 69 kilo class.
Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and take the 69s, and just to kind of dovetail off of what Ryan just said, I think one of the fun conversations to have, given Christian Hazard's situation, and this will be her Powerlifting America debut, is that if Meg Scanlon, and we're going to get to Meg in just a few moments, if Meg Scanlon decides to stay at 69, then potentially we could be looking at Christian being one of the potential front runners next year at 63, coupled with possibly Natalie Hunter, depending upon what Natalie's doing. Natalie was supposed to compete at Advances in Houston, but didn't. So we're not certain of what the future holds for her. But again, if Meg decides to stay at 69, Christian could do some serious damage on the American side at 63. But without any further ado, let's get into the 69s, because we've got 4 of them, and this looks to be a really exciting battle. So I'm going to actually start at the bottom or I should say someone who's just moved up into the 69s with Angelina Martinez, because Angelina Martinez is somebody that we have traditionally seen lifting as a 63. So she made her 69 kilo debut just recently at Advances Houston and had an absolutely phenomenal meet. I mean, she added 12.5 kilos onto her total with the increase in body weight, and she didn't even weigh in at a full 69. So coached by David Wilson, she came and she had a PB in the squat, PB in the bench, and then of course had a PB in the deadlift as well. The lone miss that she had was her final deadlift, but her training is looking really good. Even cis advances. She just recently hit on November 9th, 175 kilo squat. She did a 110 kilo bench. And then she also pulled 230. So that's doing more than she's ever done in a competition, her PB being 225. So while I don't think respectfully that Angelina is going to be approaching that high watermark that, Meg Scanlon recently set of 573.5, I do think that she can come in, she can represent herself well and just continue that training momentum, that she's poured on since Advances, and potentially, knock her total up even maybe closer to 527.5, maybe even 530. So that's kind of what I'm looking at from Angelina. And she does have a 6.7 hit rate. So if she connects on that final deadlift, which is what she missed at Advances, we're looking at more meat on the bone there. So that's pretty exciting. We've got Jackie Malater and Gabby Martinez up next, who basically have the same exact total, right? Both of them have a PB total of 553 kilos. They are both coached by the same coach. That's Kelly Mann out of Australia. So if we talk about Jackie, if we just start with her, she is fresh off just a phenomenal personal best and best lifter performance at the NAPFs. So shout out to Jackie Malater. That is really exciting. We were talking at the beginning of this podcast about pathways for some of these other elite level lifters to showcase their talents. And these regional championships, the NAPFs, are an avenue to do so. So she's been having a great prep. She just recently hit a 205 kilo squat on November 9th. She had 135 kilo bench on November 8th. Haven't seen much from her in the deadlift during this prep, but she has a high hit rate. She averages about 7.1. Again, probably not going to be hitting that 573.5 kilo American record total, but I do anticipate her potentially putting a few kilos onto her PB total. We talk about capability and we talk about probability. She's going to come in with a big squat. I don't know that the American record in the squat is, that belongs to Celine Crum at 214 kilos. I don't know if any of these four ladies, while they all have really good squats, specifically Gabby, Jackie, and Meg, of course, I don't know that any of them are going to be in that 214 range. But then if we talk about Gabby Martinez, to my understanding, I believe she is still self-coached. She is fresh off of what we could characterize as just a disappointing performance for her personally at the World Games. But I spoke to Gabby. She and I are close. Absolutely love her. She's a phenomenal human being. She's confident, and she told me she intends to come in and win. So her training is going very well. She's seen a very consistent and upward trajectory in all three lifts, and she's already basically really close to competition body weight. Gabby does have a high hit rate of about 7.5. And recently what she's, again, we go off what she's most recently shared. And I know for a fact that she hasn't posted all of her heaviest lifts, but we did see a 192.5 kilo fatigue single, a 122.5 kilo fatigue single in the bench, and a 222.5 fatigue single from her at the deadlift. And those were all done within the last week. So a lot of these lifters rounding into form. I do think that Gabby is going to be one of those lifters who could be a podium threat for, at this SBD Austin meet. And of course, if we just talk about Meg Scanlon, she's got to be the front runner, right? Because Meg just recently had her 69 kilo debut where she did that at Avances. And oh, by the way, she only weighed in at 66.4. So she is, I talked to her personally. She's decided to stay in the 69 kilo class, at least for this meet. I don't know what's coming in the future at Nationals. Don't know if she'll make the cut back down to 63, but she has decided to compete at SBD Austin in the 69. So she's presumably got a few kilos of wiggle room, and she just had an unbelievable performance at Avances, right? I mean, literally and figuratively knocked it completely out of the park. And this is what happens when we see an uptick in body weight. And oh, by the way, you put together a 9-for-9 day. So she had a 207.5 kilo squat, a 146 bench, and a 220 kilo deadlift, which all adds up to 573.5 kilos, which is now the current and new American record total. So having talked to you a little bit previously before we went on air, Ryan, I know that you said that Meg, you've spoken to Meg and she intends to bring it and drop the hammer. Just kind of reading the tea leaves on her training. She says, that her squat and deadlift are absolutely rocking. Her bench has been a little fickle lately. She's a little bit unsure about the bench, but hey, this is Meg Scanlon we're talking about, right? She is the best bencher in the United States, pretty much regardless of weight class. And so she's done 147.5 kilo bench before, or just recently. And of course, the American record is only 146. So she should have a chip to play with in the bench press, which could potentially make it difficult for some of these other ladies. We would assume that Angelina and Gabby and potentially Jackie will be pulling after Meg. So Meg has to kind of, show her cards first. But look, I think if there's a front runner in this competition and there's a favorite to win the entire thing on the women's side, in all likelihood, it is probably Meg Scanlon. If she does do what Meg is capable of doing, she's got a 7.2 out of 9 hit rate. And if she can match or build upon the total that she just put up at Avances, she's going to make it very, very uncomfortable and difficult for these other ladies. But having said all that, I think this is, clearly the weight class to watch. Probably just because we've got 4 women that are going to be fighting it out. And I want to also give a shout out to my man, Ronnie Vallejo. I just want to mention his name. Ronnie is joining forces with Gabby on the day. He's a phenomenal game day coach. If you don't know his name, you should know it. This guy's up and coming. He's going to do a fantastic job. I have a tremendous amount of faith in his ability to bring Gabby to a really great performance. But this is going to be a fun session. So if I've got to pick somebody to kind of come out of the 69s, I'm just going to lean toward Meg, obviously, just because she put up that big total at Avances. But let's not count out these other ladies too, who are kind of right on her heels.
Perfect. Hey, listen, I had Megan on the podcast. By the time this podcast drops, that one will have dropped. I'm actually dropping Megan's tomorrow. This one will drop Monday, the week of the event. And double in it, or go back and listen to it. She reveals her 2026 pathway, whether or not she's going 63 or whether or not she's going 69. And she also talks about the backstory of Worlds and since Worlds, and after her performance at Avances, and if she also turns around and wins SBD Austin, because she's the highest ranking woman in Avances, and she wins SBD Austin on the women's side, what a remarkable comeback. And let's see how 2026, they lit a fire in her, put it that way. And she's scrappy and she's a legend. Moving into the 76s. And by the way, great breakdown of the 69s there, Matt. And I think this is it's going to be a good battle. And I can't wait to see what Megan does, because I know she's fired and prepped and ready. And she's definitely, in terms of the rebound and how roughed up she is, she's good. She said she's good. She's got nothing to lose, and she feels good with it. Chelsea Savitt, the lone 76, coming into the meet, previous PR 195 squat, 137.5 bench, 215 deadlift, and her total 538. Now, with the American record being 595, we're going to be short of that. In her training and squat on November 10th, she posted 182. On November 10th, she also posted 125, as well as a 210 deadlift. back a little ways in September, she did 217.5, which would be a single PR. She did this for a cluster double. So it looks like she's going to be coming in around where her previous numbers would have indicated. However, so Chelsea, previously campaigning as a 69, moved up to the 76 kilo weight class, albeit not fully filling out that weight class. Operating at 73.7, Chelsea always collecting those medals at IPF Worlds. And she's been at 3 Lift Worlds since 2017. In 2024, became a single lift bench world champion, putting up 137.5. She's got a monster bench. It's very reliable. And then at the Equipped World Championships and Bench Press World Championships in 2025, posted up 135, still as a 76, weighing in at 74.6. She would have done that in the Classic. No, sorry. She did that in the Classic. So Chelsea, bench press, old reliable, likely to be there. And if we look at the bench American record, as I peruse my stats here, 128.5. So Chelsea not likely to threaten the total, but definitely has an American record within reach. And why shouldn't she? A several-time world's gold medalist in the 3 lift and a world champion in single lift and bench press. So looking forward to see what Chelsea does there. I also have the 84s, and we got a big name returning to the 84s, Jessica Bittner, several-time world champion. Matt, you'll remember her back in 2018 Junior Worlds. No, Matt, you'll remember even back in 2016, the first World Championships I ever commentated, and Jessica Bittner won her first world title. Of course, she won 2 in the juniors, 2 in the Open. Eric, I don't got to tell you about her. You've worked with her through several World Championships and battles, etc. A legend in the game. So Jessica Bittner returning to the platform, Canada's own, in the squat. On October 3rd, I seen her post up 195. Now, Jess, when she's at top range, has hit 216. On October 3rd, I also seen the bench press 105, and previous personal best is 110. And I seen a 200 kilo deadlift, and we have seen her pull 250.5. And Jess at her best, we're looking at, she won 2022 Worlds with a 260. What was it? It was, what was her? Okay, let me pull this up. Hang on a second, because she won it was the biggest deadlift.
You made to step in here, don't you? Yeah, so no, she pulled 261.5 to
261.5. Thank you. I just pulled open her open powerlifting. Yeah, to beat Agatha Shitko, and it was the biggest deadlift in all of the IPF in the Classic, despite the fact that she was just a 76, which made it a go ahead, Eric.
Also her best squat, just to put some respect. My girl's name is 220, not 216. But you go ahead. You go ahead.
Okay. So anyways, absolutely phenomenal phenomenal lifter, and Jess Bittner returning. But lifts and training don't indicate. Now, this is all these lifts we're saying were at 76, winning world titles at 76, and moved up to 84, and looks like she's somewhat moonlighting with Olympic lifts, etc. And judging by the numbers I'm seeing here, previously obviously posting over 260 on the platform and hanging in 200 kilos in prep, 105 and 195 on the squat. We're operating below what we think she's going to post up. I don't think she's going to return to form like we saw when she's winning world titles. It doesn't appear as though, anyways, any indication that I could see in her prep. However, obviously, amazing to see Jessica Bittner back on the platform. She's literally a legend on the game. And, yeah, I mean, in so many battles, and who will ever forget 2022 against Agatha Shitko. The other 84, Layla Taylor. Now, I haven't seen any posts about Layla Taylor. I checked both Instagram and TikTok. However, Layla Taylor, at just 24 years old, posted up a 572.5 kilo total at the Nationals back in April 3rd, coming in third in the 84s. Layla Taylor is rising fast in the 84s. Why is that significant, you might ask? Well, she posted 540 the year before in August, put on 32.5 kilos onto her total from August in Malta 2024 to April 2025. That is a massive spread for that young lady. And finds herself in the 84s going head to head with Jessica Bittner. And Layla Taylor's in April total of 572.5 is already bigger than what Jessica Bittner is going to be bringing to the table. In terms of a clash, this is a great moment for Layla Taylor when everybody's tuning in. Jessica, a huge megastar in the game, but Layla has an opportunity here for people to leave saying Layla's name. And Layla, if she can keep that rate of progress and keep adding those kilos, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but if she can get into the 580s, potentially start scratching around near 590, oh, Nelly, we might have ourselves an 84 starting to emerge. That's a serious contender. I know the 84s are super stacked. You got Amanda Lawrence, and then you got a big gap, but there's a lot of movement and a lot of room there for a young lady like Layla. So there's the battle of the 84s. Not entirely sure what to anticipate. Layla, I'm assuming some massive progress. Jessica, lovely to have her on the platform. Not sure if she's going to be shooting for PRs, but having fun. And who doesn't like Jessica Bittner on the platform? Fellas, Matt, what do you think about the 84s?
Yeah, I would have to agree with everything you've said, Ryan. I think your scouting is accurate, and I think this could be, you know, kind of a coming out party, if you will, for Layla. Just at one of these big meets that aggregates a lot of eyeballs and so forth. And as you said, always exciting to see Jessica Bittner on stages like this. Just an exceptional lifter and talent and ambassador for our sport, and strength sports in general, quite frankly. And then I would like to add just one thing. I did speak to Chelsea. I actually reached out to a bunch of these ladies that could be considered tweeners. You know, you're not sure exactly what weight class they're going to fall on. And so I asked Chelsea, I said, what are you doing? Are we doing 69 or 76? And she said, I'm not entirely sure. I'll make my final decision this coming Monday. So on Monday is when she'll make it. But having said that, Ryan, you scouted appropriately. I did mark her down on the sheet for all of us at 76. She did say that's the way she's leaning. So she's leaning towards 76. That's where we anticipate Chelsea to show up, is in the 76 kilo class. And I will say that if she does decide to compete at 69, probably doesn't change the standings or our picks too much. So
yeah, her last 4 meets were as a 76, but you're right, a small 76.
Yeah.
And if she wanted to cut, she probably could have, but anyways, Eric, what are your thoughts about the 84 76?
Yeah, I honestly don't have much to add. I think I'd be echoing what you guys have said, and I think you guys did a great job of it, to be honest.
One thing I'll note. So Jess did say those lifts that I mentioned, she posted on October 3rd. The meet isn't until November 22nd. And she also posted the first week, my lifts are starting to click. So upon that posting to when she'll be actually lifting is quite the gap. And a lot can happen in 6 weeks, 7 weeks. So if they're starting to click 7 weeks out, you have 6 to 7 weeks, depending on, like, she posted them then. She didn't lift them then. If she did that, right? So she has quite a bit of time leading into SBD Austin if you're a Jessica Bittner fan, as I am. So I'm not ready to just totally close the door here. Based off of that, certainly you're not saying, okay, these are PR territory. You got a huge gap between 261.5 and 200 kilos. However, how close can she get? She's got 6 weeks to go, maybe 7, maybe more, depending on when she actually did the lifting. Well, only time will tell, and we'll have to see. And interesting, she's self-coached, and that's probably why she's having fun with some Olympic lifting and whatnot in there as well. But yeah, we'll see. I got questions for her when she's there, because when she decides she's going to make a world's run, she might end up with a coach again, and then we see what happens when full throttle Jessica Bittner drops the hammer to the floor, and we see. Anyways, what does your guys' podium look like, Matt? We'll start with you.
Yeah, I'll go first. Meg Scanlon in the gold medal position, followed by Natalie Richards, and then Gabby Martinez. That would be my podium. And I will say this, Ryan, and look, I've beaten this point to death on other podcasts before, but I will say it once again because it is worth saying. The highest probability of making your biggest total is when you make all 9 lifts. And I think Meg Scanlon just demonstrated that at Advances. And people, Jesus Olivares did that at Sheffield, and then we saw the biggest total ever. You know what I mean? When you make all of your lifts, it is like you to hit the biggest total. Now, I will say this, for the lifters who really don't necessarily have a shot at breaking the American record total, they can be a little bit more cavalier with their attempt selection, and they can take greater risks and bigger swings. And sometimes, not often, but sometimes, with these bigger swings, you can connect on some of these lifts. And sometimes you can see, one of these surprise totals, or they might, just able to connect the dots. And they may not even go 9 for 9. They just might go really big on one lift and actually connect. And so there are no consequences for missing at this meet. Other than, of course, being, presumably out of the running for the money at the end of it. But it's not like you're losing a qualification bid to a national team. You're not losing a shot to go to nationals or any of these things. This is a showcase meet, which is good for our sport to showcase the talents of these exceptional lifters. And so you can take these bigger swings, these bigger risks, and not essentially be penalized for it. But that is my podium.
Okay, let me update on Jessica Bittner. I don't know how this escaped me, but she did have a more recent post 3 days ago. Let me ask you fellas, if this changes, your opinions here. 207.5 squat, 107.5 bench press, and we could watch this together if you like. 210 deadlift, which is still 50 kilos off of her best. So right. The deadlift isn't really whatever, but nevertheless, and I'm wondering what's going on with the deadlift and I'm after, but nevertheless, squat, not crazy off. It's below her personal best on the platform, surely, but not crazy. And the bench press, 2.5 kilos below her personal best. It's just the deadlift that is lagging, obviously, a good 50 kilos below what she hit as a 76 a few years ago. So, look, I'm not saying she's obviously that's a crazy gap on the deadlift. She's not going to hit that total PR, but still better. If there's an injury there and the injury passes, and maybe it's only plaguing the deadlift, there's reason to believe. There's reason to hope for the future in terms of, because the squat and the bench press are there. So, anyways, whatever. We'll see what happens. Does that change your medal standing, Matt? Do you want to retake it?
No, sir, it does
okay,
not.
Good.
I'm fine.
Eric?
Yeah, it doesn't change my medal standings either, and that's no discredit or lack of hope for Jess. It's just that she would have to be battling Amanda's American record, so she could pull 300, and she's probably not going to be.
Well, what's your medal, sir?
They're exactly the same as Matt, and I would just to add some more context to that. There is, unlike the full SBD Sheffield, there's no individual lift awards here. So, for the people who are not in contention for the top 3, they're looking at, I want to break the American record for the glory, and not going, maybe I shouldn't overshoot, or maybe I shouldn't go for it because of, a potential loss of money and someone else gets it. It is just people going for it. So I think that's going to be a fun aspect to watch. And it's going to, it might make for a bloodbath in terms of lots of red on the board, but the few greens that do come from out of that, the hit rates aren't going to be great, but the hits are. So no, I have the same exact podium. I think there could be some jockeying between second and third. But I think we're going to see a pretty solid first. It would be my guess, with Meg Scanlon, which will be cool. And she's on the rise, right? So, yeah, I'm excited.
Perfect. All right, fellas. Well, thank you very much. You know what? We always do this. We just did, what did we start at? This is over 2 hours. for this preview show podcast, despite the fact that it's a short, tight flight. This is nowhere near as big as an IPF Worlds, and look how freaking much we blab and talk on. But you guys are the dream team. You come extremely well prepared, and love the banter, fellas. Much appreciated. So thank you again, and I hope to see you guys soon. And for everybody listening, let me also say, when you hear this later on this week, I'll be dropping a podcast with Mr. Eric Helms solo, where we talk about, that's right, where we talk about, because this weekend it's not only SBD Austin, Eric will be at the World Championships for Natural Bodybuilding, and you guys know him on the podcast and all the content he puts out, coaching for nutrition, coaching for strength coaching, people who've won world titles, he's written books, he's got a freaking PhD, and he's participated in bodybuilding, powerlifting, strongman, Highland Games, and Olympic lifting, and he's overqualified to be on this freaking podcast, but here he is. God bless him. And so don't miss this podcast where we go a little bit behind the scenes with Eric, and it was a remarkable conversation, an inspiring conversation. This podcast is just a couple days ago before he hits the stage for the World Championships. My dude, good luck. You're going to make us proud no matter what. But good luck, my man.
Thank you.
All right. And until next time, no further ado, Pack Lapadat. 6 up. And we are.